Welcome to another episode of Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns from the University Innovation Alliance.
And I'm Sara Custer from Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, Sara and I team up to have a conversation with a leader in the field that we think you should be learning from. Today is definitely one of those cases. We're always trying to elevate the leaders and the vision and the values that we think should be at the forefront of American higher education. So that's why we call it Start the Week with Wisdom.
And Weekly Wisdom is sponsored by Mainstay, the student engagement and retention platform proven to work through peer-reviewed research, like when it helped Georgia State reduce summer melt by 21%, or in another study when Mainstay helped GSU retain 1,200 students. Check out the research and learn more at mainstay.com.
Great. And also, this show is also broadcast on the Innovating Together podcast, which is sponsored by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and we're so grateful for their generous sponsorship. And now, very excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Yolanda Spiva, who is the president of Complete College America. Her 25-year plus career spans a range of executive leadership roles. She's been in the federal government, public affairs, operations. She's overseen multiple organizations, but she's really transformed CCA, and she was previously the president and CEO of the College Success Foundation. Welcome, Yolanda.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are super excited to introduce you to our audience. So I'll just start off by, in general, you and I have worked together for a very long time. You're one of the leaders in the field that I rely upon for expert advice and guidance when in the foxhole. And so I really think that you have insights to share that other people would benefit from around leadership. So let's just start with, as a leader, if you were to describe your style or the way that you approach leadership, can you give us the quick, what is that flavor and what most informed that flavor of leadership? Like, was it a person or an experience?
Yeah, so I would say that my leadership style is probably just treating people the way I'd like to be treated. And so, I mean, it's just the basics of, recognizing other people's humanity and showing up as a human being and a real person. So I think that while there are all sorts of leadership styles bandied about in books and things of that nature, really, if you bring your most authentic self to the enterprise, I think you can't go wrong. And so, and what really informed my leadership style was just experience. I wasn't always the leader. And so I've had an opportunity to engage with all sorts of backgrounds and experiences, some positive, some not so positive. And so I think it's an amalgamation of all of those experiences that tell you, I don't like the way that felt, and I never want anyone to feel that way. And under my leadership, I want to make sure people feel valued, seen, that their contributions amount to something, and that they're doing meaningful work. So I would just say that I tend to be, most people who work with me would say, I'm open, I'm approachable, I have high expectations. I'm firm about those expectations, but I also don't ask people to do things I wouldn't ask myself to do. And so because I have very high expectations for myself, those are the sorts of expectations I have for others. And I've done a lot of different things. And so because of that, I kind of have an insight into what it takes to do the work. So I'm not going to be unreasonable about the approach, but at the same time, I try to give people room to be creative and innovative. And I want people to grow and thrive and to be able to be the best that they can be, whether it's working with me or somewhere else.
That's great, Yolanda. And that I love that authentic approach to leadership. It sounds, like something that's, quite authentic and refreshing, I'm sure, to a lot of the teams that you are leading. One question I had for you was about, I guess, just kind of the state that higher education finds itself in currently, which is a bit tumultuous, a bit fraught. It's a difficult time for a lot of institutions right now, politically, financially, leadership-wise. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what change you think we need to see from higher education right now?
Oh, geez. Well, I think that the biggest change that we need is to recognize that we've been through changes before. We've had tumultuous times before. And so if you think about any era in American history, it's been fraught with issues and problems, and we've been divided. I mean, we've had no greater divisions than segregation, for example. And there were people who had to make forays into that environment that was very contentious and tumultuous and hostile. And so I think that the more things change, the more they actually remain the same. So I think I remain optimistic and buoyed by the fact that we've been through, in some ways, rougher times than we're in now. And so as much as we're having a lot of issues and division, we've also made so much progress in higher ed that I think it gives us a reason to still have a North Star, which is the fact that it is, just like America, it is an enterprise to continue to be perfected. It is not a perfect one. So I think with that being my mindset, it keeps me excited about what's possible, because also higher ed is one of the sectors where a lot of our innovation takes place in the world anyway. It comes from higher ed with the research and development that takes place on campuses. I'm optimistic about what we can do because we've created so many things as a sector that have really made changes for the world that I just can't believe that we can't do the same for our sector itself. So I'm optimistic.
I think that's, I share your optimism. I also think we have to keep changing, not do the same thing, but change is not the end of it's actually a part of our DNA. So yeah.
Yes.
I am curious about the twin pillars of the like your favorite thing that you've done as a leader and also the hardest thing that you've had to navigate just in your professional world. Most people, when we ask them about the hardest thing, they say COVID, which I think is a fair answer and for all of us. But I'm just wondering if you could give us that, like, what are those two pillars for you so that we can better understand kind of what matters to you and also what has kind of shaped your resilience?
Well, I would say the best thing, I guess you could say, is seeing folks who have worked with me go on to do bigger and better things. I really just appreciate the fact being able to watch someone grow and develop as a team member. And then even for those who are interested in doing things on a leadership level, to see them actually, grow and develop and go other places and reach new heights in their own career. That's so gratifying to me to see people move in a direction that is satisfying for them. So that's something. And I've seen lots of former employees go on to do great things. And so when I run into them at conferences or meetings, I'm always excited by that. So that's one. I would say the thing that's been the hardest is just a lot of betrayals. So from, folks who you thought were trusted employees or colleagues, et cetera, and just having to navigate that, it's a real thing. So,
yeah.
But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So.
Yeah, learn how to keep your powder dry, or just wow, I did not see that. That's a super helpful lesson to learn about that person. Boy, I just would like to stop learning lessons.
Yeah. But I'll tell you though, it does help you see some things coming the next time, right? You see it a little better next time.
True. That's very true. Lived experiences can serve you far into your career. On that, I'm curious to know what the best advice is that you've received for your career.
Actually, and if this was from a person who was very interesting, not a fan actually, but it was great advice, which was to bloom where you're planted. And I found myself in a lot of roles that were difficult during sometimes difficult times. And even sometimes trying to figure out, why am I here at this particular moment in history or in time? And why am I doing this? And the job may not have felt like the best thing at the time. But if you take that perspective to just bloom where you're planted and sort of, take root, dig in, nothing lasts forever per se. So you're going to be here. What can you learn from it? How do you grow from it? You can really turn all of your lemons into lemonade. So I really have found that to be a very, very good advice to take, and not to fret when you're in a place that doesn't feel the best, but to really dig in and try to find something positive and make something positive out of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
You strike me as a natural optimist, Yolanda. So I can see how that bit of advice would really speak to you.
Yeah, especially when you didn't want to bloom.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to. But
no.
Why can't it just be easy? Why is that have to? Yeah.
That's right.
So you and one of the things I know about you is that you at some point in the past became an executive coach. Part of that, I think, is just your thirst for knowledge, and because you as a leader, always wanting to refine your craft and be sharp, that you want to, part of that is figuring out how others would coach others. So as an executive coach, which you don't have time to do that individually, but you do it for me personally. I'm just curious about what you have learned from that experience that helps you be a better leader. Is there anything that, is there a tool in your toolbox now that you coach internally your team as a leader, as a manager, or just can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I would say that there's a universal concept of people wanting to feel valued and seen, and to feel like the work that they're doing has meaning and impact. I really believe that. And of course, people also want to, we're in a capitalistic society. They also want to be remunerated properly, of course. But universally, I think that people care more about feeling valued, and then of course having that value show up in terms of compensation. So what I've seen the most is that people just want to feel like their worth is not being denied. And whether that worth is their time, their talent, or their treasure, they want to make sure that all of those things are feeling valued. In terms of things in the toolkit, it depends. So when I'm dealing with women in leadership, the conversations are very different sometimes than men, but also when I'm dealing with women of color or people of color, it's a different conversation. So I would say that while there are some things that are universal, as I mentioned, there are some things that are conversations that, we're dealing with, whether it's culture, if it's fit, if it's dealing with, sometimes the conversations are about, am I crazy? And they feel like someone is either out to get them or trying to do to sabotage them or out to do harm to their career. And to be honest, a lot of times those things are not something that they're making up. And you would be surprised how many people are really just have negative intentions and don't want to support someone on their journey. And so trying to validate their feelings and help them to see a way that they can navigate it in a professional way that won't be injurious to them in terms of their reputation, image, or career is really the toughest part. But I would say that, helping people to validate their experience and then helping them to navigate it is really the common thread and common denominator.
That's great. Sarah, I'll let you if you have another question. Otherwise, I'm chomping at the bit.
Well, I was just gonna, again, kind of along those lines, is there a bit of advice that you consistently give to people that you're leading?
Well, the first thing is to just always be honest. Take ownership if you make a mistake or do something wrong. That's just the best course of action. Don't try to cover something up or make an excuse for why it happened, because it actually leads to more problems. And then for those who are thinking about leadership, because I always get a lot of questions from those who are especially now, lots of folks walk into the organization at the associate level and they want to be the president. And I say, well, be careful what you ask for, be careful what you wish for, and then just make sure that whatever role you're gunning for, that you're prepared, because it's easy to get, well, it's not easy, but sometimes it can be easy to get a title or to get placed in a role. The last thing you want to do is get there and not be ready for the job. And so I would just say to try to get as much experience as you can, as much diversified types of experiences. And that's really bode well for me, being a generalist more so than a specialist, because then you know a lot about a number of things as opposed to about one particular thing. And in a job like this, when you're in leadership, you have to know about all facets. It's not just about, I understand, in my case, for example, I understand colleges and universities or higher ed. You also have to know about being a CEO. And that's the other part, which is the financial management, insurance, employment law, all those sorts of things. So you have to be a little bit of a of a person who is very well-rounded, very well-read, very knowledgeable, and has varied experiences. So be prepared to do a lot of work to get to the leadership role that you're aspiring toward, but make sure you really take the time to learn about not just how it works, but also about people, because you can't get the work done without working through other people. So also learning how to be a good manager and leader is going to be very important, and how to relate to people and be relatable as well.
That's great. So our last rapid fire is there a leadership book that has been most useful for you that you frequently find yourself recommending to people, or just a book that you think is like, man, everyone should read this?
Well, yeah, I mean, anything by John Maxwell is something that I would just recommend. Again, I still think that depending on the person, I recommend certain books, but one of my favorite books is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I just think that, again, it's sort of, people think because they're in a particular role or they're in a particular organization, oh, I can do that. No, what it takes to get where you are today doesn't mean that's what it's going to take to get to the next level of where you're aspiring towards. So I'd recommend that book. Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and I feel like we're just getting just scratching a surface. But thank you so much for the opportunity to elevate you and to share a little bit about you with our audience. So I really appreciate you being such a great guest, and also Sara, thanks for being an awesome co-host.
My pleasure. Thanks for being an awesome co-host too. Nice to meet you, Yolanda.
Nice to meet you. Thank you both.
Bye.